IVM.
Welcome to the Apne Liye Apno Ke Liye podcast. Hi, I'm Dr. Meghna, the therapist mommy. I'm a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist with 15 years experience in mental health. I'm also an internationally certified parenting educator, and I'm a mom to 2 kids. The tendency to put yourself last is especially prevalent in moms. According to a survey, 78% of moms report they're putting off taking care of their own health because they were too busy looking after their loved ones. When asked to rank the amount of time spent managing the health of various family members, the same moms put them in this order. Kids took the most time, then pets, older relatives, then spouses or significant others, and then finally themselves. Seriously, 3 places behind the family dog. But after everyone from the kids to the family members are handled, there's not much that's left over for moms. Moms need to take their self-care into their own hands, putting me time up at the top of the family priority list. If you think about it, it makes sense. Taking care of yourself puts you in a position to be a better mom overall. Self-care is a necessity, not an indulgence. And today, I'll be speaking to Shreya Gautam about navigating self-care as moms. Shreya is a mom of 2. She is an influencer and an entrepreneur. She runs a community of bloggers called Bloggers Meet Info BMI. She recently walked the ramp at the Bombay Times Fashion Week 2022. Welcome, Shreya. It's so great to have you here, Shreya.
I can't
thank you enough. So, as I mentioned in my intro, today we're all talking about mommy guilt and taking care of ourselves, self-care, prioritizing ourselves, filling our own cup. Let's start by talking about your experience as a mother. How did you find yourself growing as a mom?
So I think I've always maintained that motherhood is kind of a learning experience. You're not only bringing up a child, you're also learning because a mother is born with the child. So there is no rule book or a manual that comes with it. You have to make your own manual and you have to learn along the way. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. I'm learning along with being a mother. There is a lot that it teaches you. Patience, primarily, how to put someone else's needs at times before yours, and be responsible for a life that you brought into this world on your own responsibility. So that is something that, it teaches you.
Right. And what was your emotional state like after giving birth? Did you have to deal with postpartum depression or postpartum blues?
Funny you ask, because I've been very vocal about this. I went through postpartum depression after my first delivery. I was a young mom. I had my first one at the age of 23. And to be honest, there wasn't, as much conversation around mental health back then as it is now. So there were mixed feelings, I came back home. I had a normal delivery. I had a smooth sailing pregnancy. So once I came home, I didn't know what these feelings were. I'm watching TV and my child is in my lap and suddenly I'm just crying. So that didn't really, make sense to me. Is it supposed to happen? Is it normal? And we did have an idea that it could be, that word did get thrown around. But to be honest, it was my mistake. I didn't really pay attention to it. Mujhe nahi ho sakta. Like that. And then I ignored the signs and it led to full-blown depression. That is when my mother stepped in and she said, you really need to see someone and do something, because I was going through a lot emotionally. I saw a psychiatrist. I underwent treatment for 11 months along with counseling.
That's great.
And I saw the difference. And today when I look back and, think about what I was going through, I'm like, and I laugh. Am I this person? So that taught me to see the signs to look out for. What is it that, can happen and lead to this? So when I had my second pregnancy, which was a high-risk pregnancy, I had a very difficult birth. I had a premature daughter at 33 weeks and she spent time in an ICU and there was a lot of back and forth to the hospital. I was prepared to see the signs. And thankfully, at that time, I didn't have postpartum depression. So I was quite, impressed with myself that I learned how to, navigate around things. So, I think it's very important. As pregnant ladies, we do a lot of sonographies, a lot of, blood tests to see that the child is fine. But I think we also need to include a session where mothers are counseled about what they're going to go through and they can see the signs of postpartum depression.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for saying this out loud, because as a therapist, I can't emphasize this enough. When you mentioned that I was going through some feelings, but I sort of ignored them. And that is quite the opposite of what we recommend mothers do, because
Exactly.
it doesn't take much for these postpartum blues to turn to postpartum depression. And
True.
I'm just so glad that you found the support, the right kind of support. You accessed help, professional, qualified help. I'm so glad.
Thank
More
you.
power to you for speaking this out
Thank
loud
you.
and breaking the stigma that exists around new mothers accessing help. So, to be the best mom, everyone thinks that you have to be available for your child all the time. Do you feel the same?
No, I think I've had 10 years of experience in this. I don't agree with this. You cannot possibly be there 24/7. At some point, if you become a helicopter parent and you're nagging them and you're on their head, I don't think you're helping them. I
Yeah.
think you're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So I can't agree with this statement.
Yeah. Okay. So, Shreya, do you feel guilty about wanting some me time? And how often, do these feelings of guilt come up for you? And what do you do about them?
I think 10 years back, I did. I'm not going to lie. I did go through the mom guilt that, I'm doing something for myself, but what if my child needs me when I'm not there? But I realized that, if I don't do this, I'm going to go insane. I need to take out time for myself. Whether it was, I started blogging for myself as it was like a
Release.
venting space for me. So for me, it started as fun and then it turned into a career. So that was something that I started doing for myself. An hour a day, I would sit down and write a blog about what I was feeling, how motherhood was affecting me. That's something that I decided that I will do for myself. Apart from that, just going out with yourself. You don't always have to go out with someone. Go for a drive. I love driving. So, go for a drive with loud music on and just take that half an hour, 45 minutes for yourself. And trust me, when you come back, you're so refreshed
Yeah.
and you want to do things not by force, but you're
because you
willing,
want to do
because you
them.
want to do them.
Yeah. So, apne liye, when you take out time, it actually flows beautifully into apno ke liye.
Absolutely. I mean, it couldn't be more true.
And you know what? You actually mentioned about blogging. Can I share something interesting with you?
Please do.
So obviously all the mothers won't blog, right? But what we recommend in therapy, and it's really validated by scientific research, journaling. So basically just
Makes a
the
lot of
act
difference.
of putting a pen to paper and just venting and writing about your thoughts, your feelings, whatever it is that you're going through makes a huge difference
Right.
to your mood and your mental health.
Right.
In
Because-
fact, journaling is like, it's considered to be one of the go-to strategies, whether you have, blues, not unrelated or unrelated to childbirth, whether you are, have a fight with a partner or whether you're in generally a bad mood. It is one of the go-to strategies to, better your mood, to get into that space of, okay, this is what I feel, to get in touch with your own feelings. And it's actually strangely therapeutic. So the early years of motherhood are incredibly busy, and your focus so much is on making sure that, especially sometimes as a first-time mom, when you don't know much, and so much of it is trial by error, so much of it is listening to what your ped is saying and your mother and mother-in-law saying, and it becomes quite a jumble there. So what are some of the tips that you would like to share with our listeners with regard to making time for oneself in that time? Because that is a very vulnerable, psychologically, physically, a very vulnerable phase for a new mom.
I think, I've always believed that kuch to log kahenge. Let people say. There is no harm in listening to someone else's advice. But you are your own person. You know yourself and your baby better than anyone in this world. So trust your instinct. Like, for example, for me, a lot of people told me, 2 hours dot on the clock, you have to feed the baby. And my child is peacefully sleeping. I can get that 1 more hour of sleep. So I will trust myself. If my child is hungry, she will show me the signs. So I'm going to take the hint from that and then decide. You cannot, Xerox copy someone else's mom book.
Yeah.
You have to make your own.
And this is such a relevant point, because for listening to that instinct, which is
It's
natural,
very important.
is so important, but it sort of gets crowded by all the cacophony of noises
true,
that
true.
exist, all the criticism and the opinions and kuch to log
Meghna,
kahenge.
if you go to see motherhood, bringing up a child is not such a difficult job by itself. Because after a point they start doing things by themselves. I think what is more difficult is bringing up a child, keeping everyone's opinions in mind.
But that's
trying to
impossible,
impress
right? We
everyone.
can't do that.
That
That's
is not
unrealistic.
possible, and that is where the mental pressure comes in. So
Exactly.
look at your child, take cues from your child. Just because something worked for someone else does not mean it's going to work for you. You have to make your own decision, keeping your sanity in check.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So how would you say that you said that, it's about getting in touch with your instincts and being true to what makes sense to you. But how do we balance that with taking care of the family? So how do I balance taking care of myself, prioritizing my self-care with also prioritizing the needs of my family?
I think, Meghna, it's very important to draw boundaries. There is certain time that has to be family time. There is a certain time that has to be a couple time, and then there is time that is for yourself. And those boundaries, for me, I have had that support system where those boundaries have always been respected. I went from a stay-at-home mom to a working mom, and I don't even know when that transition happened, because it was that smooth for me. So those boundaries really need to be drawn where, you know that this is what I have to do for myself, and I will do it for myself. And others have to follow through on it, because again, I'm an adult here, so I have the right to decide how I want to lead my life. And that needs to be respected by others around you.
So knowing my needs, getting in touch with myself, knowing my needs, and drawing healthy boundaries and asserting those boundaries.
Exactly. So it's very easy to draw boundaries, but asserting boundaries
Maintaining
is
them
difficult.
is probably the most difficult thing. Yes. And in drawing these boundaries, what usually happens is there's pushback.
There is.
Right. So how does one go from being this Tyag Ki Devi to actually being happy about doing something for ourselves and balancing the fact that there's going to be pushback and, I do not give in to that mom guilt and I'm still able to take care of my family. How does that?
First of all, I think if you have to do something right now for your child and then 20 years down the line you have to tell them that, beta, मैंने तुम्हारे लिए ये सब छोड़ा. Any child would turn around and say, क्यों छोड़ा? I didn't ask you to. So why should I do that? And I have 2 daughters. Am I teaching my daughters to do the same thing? Would I be happy? Is my mother happy seeing me like this? These are things that you need to have a conversation with yourself. Sit down and talk to yourself. That monologue is very important. Where you're telling yourself, is this how I want to lead my life? If not, then I need to bring the change. That is important. So that is something that, everyone I think should do. So that is also part of self-care, I feel.
No, absolutely. Getting in touch with what I need and what is important for me is the first step of self-care.
Exactly.
The first step of recognizing that unless I do that, I actually won't be able to do much else.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Shreya. This was such a lovely conversation. I applaud your guts. I applaud your courage.
Thank you so
I
much.
applaud you trying to not just impart some very valuable self-care tips to new moms, but also breaking the stigma around mental health. So thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for being here.
It was a pleasure being here, and thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thanks for this lovely conversation, Shreya. And if you want to know more about Shreya, head over to her Instagram page, 4tinyfeet, and give her a follow. I'd love to hear your thoughts on staying positive and your stories of taking care of yourself to lead a happier, fulfilling life. Head over to my Instagram @thetherapistmommy and be a part of the conversation. We had some beautiful conversations with these incredible moms over these episodes. Mom guilt is real, but all the moms out there need to be aware that self-care or me time is important because self-care is a part of mother's care, and every mother deserves a break. A mother needs to prioritize time for apne liye while fulfilling the responsibilities apnon ke liye. Share your guilt-free mom experiences with #apne liye apnon ke liye on social media. We hope these podcast conversations help you and all the other mothers out there to think about caring for themselves, which enables them to care for their families too. The Apne Liye Apno Ke Liye podcast is brought to you by SBI Life Insurance. For more details, log on to sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे. SBI लाइफ, अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए.